Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're so excited that you could join us for today's presentation hosted by Grace Hill. Today, our experts will present the reasons why you need to start or restart your mystery shop program this spring. Ensure your prospects and residents are getting the best service and the most consistent experience possible with unbiased assessments and follow-up training. But before we get started and turn it over to our experts, I wanted to quickly walk you through the control panel, which is on the right-hand side of your GoToWebinar. If you don't see the control panel, it might be minimized. You can show or hide the control panel with the arrow that's at the top. It's like an orange-red. And underneath that is your audio mute button and the window that will dock it with the adjustment toggle below. If you're a frequent flyer to our webinar events, I want you to know that we have a new function to share with you today. The last icon on the bottom of the control panel is a hand raise option. So we have a lot of people join today. Everybody's on mute, but if you do want to ask a question during the Q&A section and you want to say it out loud instead of typing it into the chat, raise your hand and we'll unmute you. So hopefully everybody is joined by audio now. If you have any trouble or you lose connection during the webinar, you can always switch to the phone call and dial in to hear audio that way. So lastly, don't forget to download the mystery shopping flyer that is in the control panel. You can also feel free to submit your questions in the chat at any point, and then at the end, we'll go through them with Jay and Amy. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our presenters, Amy Cortez and Jay Thompson. Welcome to you both.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Allison. And thank you all for joining us today. As Allison said, my name is Amy Cortez, and I'm going to be one of your hosts today. But more importantly, we have Jay Thompson with us. Jay is our senior sales engineer at Grace Hill. Jay has served as both a regional property manager for a national brand and an account manager at Grace Hill on strategic accounts. Jay knows what it takes to elevate property performance and reduce operating risk in multifamily. His expertise in the multifamily industry and his extreme knowledge of our products really classifies him as an expert. I know I learn something new every single day from Jay, and I know that you're going to learn something from him today. So if you've been on a webinar before, you've probably seen our performance loop, which is on the screen right now, and it's really how all of our products tie together. Our focus for today really is on the mystery shopping portion of our performance loop. We're really going to dive in and talk about the reasons, and most 4 reasons to restart, or maybe for some of you just to start mystery shopping. So really the benefit of this is it allows us to blend both the technology, which is that software side of it, with the assessment side and the best practices. And it gives you the best part really of what we are discussing today that is built specifically for the multifamily industry. Our goal is to really talk about the overall advantages of restarting or starting mystery shopping. And we are going to be walking through a lot of questions in which we receive on a regular basis about mystery shopping. So with that, we're going to get started with a poll. So Allison, if you can get us launched on the poll.
Absolutely. Thanks, Amy. So the first question for our poll is, what kind of mystery shop program do you currently have? So you can just go right ahead on your screen, click into one of those answers. The first one being as needed, quarterly, monthly, or none. And I can still see that responding. So just going to give you another minute before we close out the poll. And people are still answering, so just go right ahead and click on your screen. I'm going to close it out in 3, 2, 1. All right, so I want to share the results with you. This is what the audience said.
So it looks like we've got 34% of our audience is doing quarterly right now, so ahead of the curve and doing great. We've got 34% that does it as needed, 6% doing it monthly, and 23% not doing it at all. So thank you so much for your answers. That really helps us guide our conversation as we go through this webinar. So I'm going to start with a question to you, Jay. Can you explain why anyone would want to do mystery shopping? Truly, what is the benefit to them and their overall properties?
Yeah, so thanks so much, Amy. I am super excited to talk about this. I will tell you again, having sat in the shoes of a lot of our, attendees today, mystery shop, I think sometimes is, we've had a love-hate relationship with it. Sometimes we've really embraced it. Other times we've had issues with it. But I think when we really talk about what the value is for mystery shopping, it's unparalleled, right? So those of you maybe in the poll that said, we're not doing anything today, let's talk a little bit about that. And, first, when we talk about mystery shop, you receive unbiased performance evaluations, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about what our concept here is at Grace Hill, but there is certainly shops as needed. Sometimes those may be in a need to be reactive to a situation. You may have a performance issue at a property, or you have an investor that is concerned about an issue and maybe we need to. We really tell too a proactive approach. So that proactive really helps you mitigate the majority of that reactive, if you will, but it allows you to proactively measure what your property performance is. And I believe your property performance is more than just the individual leasing agent. It is taken into account the total really experience, and that's from things such as signage and the way it smells to even the interaction that they have throughout, with your staff, if you will. The other thing that I think that it does is it allows us to really see when we talk about that unbiased. You may remember there were 4 P's. We affectionately added 5, and now there's kind of new 5 P's when it comes to marketing. But it really does. Mystery gives you insight into the pride of your asset. What does it look like? What is that subjective feeling of the shopper? It allows you to look at personalization. Am I really tailoring my sales needs to the needs of that individual sitting in front of me? It does look at your overall product, and as we've always known, it can help you identify maybe personnel issues. So kind of blending some of the new, 5 P's of marketing with some of those old tried and true as well. The other thing too, it's that third party shopper, right? And I will tell you one of the things that we do here at Grace Hill, particularly with our commercial properties, is we help them assess like ESG. One of the ESG requirements is that it has to be done with a third party shopper or a third party, excuse me. And the reason why that's done is because there's value. I, as a former regional, could definitely walk into an asset and maybe I hope this doesn't sound bad for me, maybe pick it apart, right? That was part of my job in there. I also probably had some affinity for my staff as well, that sometimes maybe gave a bias, right? It truly wasn't looking through the lens of what are my prospects' experiences. I held my own kind of preconceived notions of maybe where my gaps were or where my strengths were. So really when we talk about that third party that's given direction as to what they look for, but it truly is unbiased. The other thing that we talk about, Amy, is why it's important is to improve the skill of the leasing team. When I said we have a love-hate relationship in a lot of ways with Mystery Shop, it really came from the fact that Mystery Shop used to be considered punitive. I will tell you when I first started in the industry, if I was below an 85, they took money out of my paycheck. I will tell you as a leasing professional, I didn't necessarily embrace the idea of mystery shops knowing that, right? But I think when we really think about it, what we have heard and what we've seen really in professional development now with employees is that they want a growth mindset. It's okay that sometimes they may get a shop that is not always 100%, but are you training them on the gaps? More so than just giving us, hey, you made an 85. Are you really going, here's how we move you forward, right? So I do want to show you really quickly, because I think this should be a show and tell, why we think that's so important and how we improve it. I hope that your mystery shop program, for those that are currently doing it, live or tie into your LMS, because again, that's where the value comes when we identify that. So for example, let's talk about upskill training, right? So if we actually look in here at one of our shopping areas, we'll notice this individual made a 74. Probably not the greatest. If I go back though and we look, let's say at this individual, they made a 94%. I will tell you, I'm a former college athlete and I firmly believe the best is the standard. Not just that attaboy, attagirl, on the back, but really best is the standard. And so even though this individual made a 94%, there's still area that they could improve. So let's make sure that we're tying those gaps back every time to some kind of skill set that we can retrain on or revisit with them. You know, and one of the things that we also love when you're doing that is we really hope that that means some kind of booster training, right? Something that lives on. So for example, in our product, if you will, we have these things right here that are our booster. Again, this is one of our upskill trainings. And I just wanted to show you why I think it's so meaningful. And that is because I actually can come in and freeform an improvement plan, right? So maybe I'm gonna say that I'm gonna walk my tour path every day. So we'll come in here, we'll note that, I can submit that. The great news is then that moving forward, that actually lives on your transcript. So for example, now, if I'm a regional and I need to look back at one of my employees, I'm able to see, hey Jay, last time, you know, you wrote a plan on the things you were gonna do to make sure that email responses included important elements. You said things like referring to our company procedures and our policy partner, setting up some design templates that could be tailored. Where did maybe we miss the mark? And the good news is these can also be exported to your HRIS system. So again, you can really track that and move the needle. So, you know, that would be really the second reason, Amy, is again, unbiased, but also using it to improve. And then finally, let's be honest, it's really to increase your revenue, right? That's all that we're really, we want to make sure that your property performance is tailored and is hitting on all cylinders. And the fact of the matter is one size does not fit all. When we talk about mystery shop, where one of my former, you know, one of my assets may be struggling in one area, another one is struggling in another area. So I really love the fact that mystery shop gives me that insight into what moves the needle at my specific assets so that again, I can increase that leasing velocity, overall revenue, and bottom line increasing in
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jay. And Jay, we're having a lot of people saying that they can't hear you. So, you know, if you want to click to phone, if you go up into the audio and dial in on phone, while you make that switch, because your content's so amazing, we want to make sure everyone can hear you. Allison, I'm going to ask you if maybe you can launch the next poll to give Jay some time so that he can dial in on the phone.
Absolutely, Amy, and thanks, Jay. We did have a few people chime in that they couldn't hear. So for the audience, I appreciate you letting us know, and I was trying to feverishly respond as quickly as I could. Okay, so the next poll that we have for you is, what challenges are you facing today as it relates to your property performance? So these are the different options that you have. You can select employee turnover, decreased foot traffic, declining lead to lease conversions, softening market conditions, and competition. And I can see that you guys are all answering, so this is fun. On my end, I can see the percentages of the audience that's responding. So I'm going to give you guys another couple minutes until these numbers stop moving for a second, and then I'll have Amy see the results. All right, we're going to close this out. So real quick, make your final selection in 3, 2, 1. All right, so let's take a look at what those results were. Here you go.
Wow, we are all over the board here. So 23% says that they're facing employee turnover. And I think that's standard across the world today as we know it, right? Lots of employee turnover and a lot of people moving. 22% is saying decreased foot traffic. 31% declining lead to lease conversion. 14% that softening of the market conditions, and 11% to competition. So this is really interesting and definitely shows some different marks all across the board there. So thank you for replying. We're going to talk a little bit about some of these. I want to make sure we've got our host. Jay, are you back?
I am. Can you hear me better?
Oh, yes, we can hear you better, for sure.
Much better.
Just a little transition in the middle of the webinar. So you saw a whole bunch of things that people are dealing with right now. One of the things that we often hear or want us to share is what type of information do individuals gain with the adding of the mystery shopping to their current situation? We saw at that beginning poll that 23% that's on the call today isn't doing any at all, and some is just doing on a monthly and maybe not a regular basis. So what do they gain by adding mystery shopping on an ongoing basis?
Yeah, that's a great question. So let's talk about first what you gain in the actual shop itself. So if you've never seen that, let's talk a little bit about that. And then we'll talk about really the metrics that come with it, which is a huge part of that ROI, right? So when you're actually looking at our shops are going to encompass an objective set and then a subjective set as well. So objective set is going to be things like response times and rates. And when we kind of get down a little bit more into why these things matter, we're going to talk a little bit more about what the customer is wanting in regards to response times, but you're going to see things like that. We also want to make sure that they're meeting your company standards. So, again, you have a certain way that you solve leasing. Some of that, of course, is going to be universal across all of us. But I know some of the attendees, I've seen some of the names out there, are doing some real unique things in the way that you're presenting and selling to your customer base. So we want to make sure that you're doing that. Our shops do allow customization in that regard. So let's make sure if there are specific drivers to your sales methods, that we are really going to enhance those. Again, it does look at overall sales training opportunities, i.e. gaps, that you may want to address. So if we even look here, you'll notice there's things like laying the foundation, demonstration, closing. All of those things you're going to have insight to, even down to risk mitigation. So even fair housing, we're going to take it something, look at like, did they mention specific terms other than occupant or person? Did they attempt to kind of steer you in a general direction? But finally, one of the things that you do get is you do get a subjective part to it as well, right? So there's a part in here that our team asks about your enthusiasm, your knowledge, etc. We want to know how your teams communicate, their attitude, and again, overall passion for what they're doing. I will tell you, I had a person one time, we had a video shop, and I will never forget, they came in and they said, they passed the objective portion of it, but they failed the subjective part of it. And people, they really were like, I don't get it. I did everything I was supposed to do. So we watched the video, and let's say Amy walked in and their response was, hi, would you like to see an apartment? Literally that dry, right? And we talked about what that emotional connection and what that passion did. So again, subjective is an important part of the overall plan. So you are going to get that again, that objective and subjective data as well. Also, as a former regional that lives in Florida, but had assets in Texas and Missouri, some of my shops had video elements. While it wasn't a full tour of my property, right, at least I could genuinely or generally see, if you will, the overall curb appeal and what my models look like. So it allowed me to kind of, quote unquote, have boots on the ground, even if I couldn't be there. And then finally, one of the most important part is really the analysis and what you do with that. So for example, we have question level analysis here, right? Well, again, I do love the fact that you can tailor your needs to your specific locations. What I do love here is our question level analysis allows you to see areas as company-wide that you may be, having an opportunity for improvement in. So here, if I stack rank in my demo, closing and demonstration are one of my weakest parts as a company. So as L&D professionals here on the line, I'd be like, hey, let's go figure out whether it's Grace Hill content or whether or not you want to supplement with some of your own custom content. But how do we address that as a company whole? Because it's obviously an area that we can improve in. And of course, also you get to see stack ranking by location and even by employee. So the reason why I love that is now you've got opportunities to pull some individuals that are doing a great job. Have them be your coach. Leverage your own team. You also can identify the area that maybe you need to go a little bit more hand in hand with to make sure that you're really getting, that ROI.
Absolutely. So thank you for that insight, Jay, and so very helpful as it relates to everything that that people are seeing as the mystery shopping results are coming back. You know, one of the trends and things that we've seen a lot is prior to 2020, we saw a lot of people doing mystery shopping, and then COVID hit, and really the whole world shut down, and we saw that people couldn't engage, we couldn't get in there for mystery shopping, and so things just kind of paused. And then also budgets kind of tightened at that time, right? Because everyone was kind of in a question mode. But what we've also seen is some people just haven't brought it back to the forefront of their mind to restart those programs. So if someone's on the call today and they're really on the fence about, hey, should I restart? I've got a tight budget. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question, Amy. And really, I'm looking at the poll responses, right, about the
Yeah.
declining lead conversions, the softening of the market. So I will tell you, I have had some unique opportunities to really meet with our operating partners. And in that regard, one of the things I've heard, and maybe this will ring a bell with you, is they said, you know, there's a whole generation, if you will, of leasing or even on-site that they may have came in during COVID and the market was really high, you know, late 2020, early 2021, occupancy was at an all-time low. And they said, you know, Jay, the fact is we have people that are walking in and they know they're going to get the lease. There's really no other place for these people to go when occupancies were so high and just the inventory was low. We're now beginning to see a little bit of the market softening, and these operators said, we've got to go back to the basics, coach our team on the basics, make sure that we're getting insight if they're doing that, because all of a sudden now, those same people that knew they were getting the lease are having to actively compete again for each person that walks in. And so they were like, got to go back to training and to assessing whether or not our teams are really doing that. And it is kind of a mind shift for some of this, you know, new blood, if you will, that has joined the leasing team. So as we look at the reasons why, I want to put a disclaimer out there that fundamentally the industry still looks very strong. We don't want to induce panic when we start talking about it. But some things that we're seeing just through our partners is the market is beginning to soften, right? So Fannie Mae, for example, talks about absorption, or i.e. demand in multifamily. You know, in 2021, the demand was about 662,000 units. By the end of 2022, that demand was at a negative 103,000 units. They're expecting that negative to even come even more into 2023. ALN actually cites that half of the market did not meet net absorption in Q1, i.e., that market is softening. So we're going to see again some more competition. We are seeing vacancy rates slightly decrease, right? The average from about 2005 to 2022 was about 5.8%. Right now we're sitting at about 6.25% in vacancy rates. So again, strong need to kind of show that again, market's beginning to change a little. You know, and it's not just across one of our asset types. They have been hit the hardest, but there's always a trickle down. If Class A begins to kind of soften, those people start looking at maybe Class B and Class C. So Class C has even seen a negative demand, and it's the first time in 5 years that they've seen as well. So it's really going to be kind of interesting when you couple that with projected year-over-year job growth is expected to be almost 1% less, so approximately 2 million jobs. And even like disposable personal income is down to 0.1% when you factor in inflation. All of that comes back and ties into the revenue potential for your assets. Again, the market is fundamentally stable, but you are going to have to begin to actively compete a little bit more. And what I would say is we're even seeing that happen, even positive outlook areas. For example, I live in the Tampa Bay market, you know, and Tampa Bay has 11,000 units. But even with the potential job growth here, we're still expected that the demand is going to be down by about 7,000 units. So even those traditionally hot markets right now are beginning to see a wane. You know, the other thing I would say in terms of the market softening is that inventory. So here's a staggering amount. 2022 was one of the strongest years in delivery for the multifamily sector, with almost 470,000 units delivered. 2023 right now, there are 783,000 units projected to be completed, almost a 75% increase over 2022. Now, granted, we're probably not going to see that total delivery due to construction delays and labor and material shortages, but 100%, again, inventory's out there. So more supply out there, demand doesn't have to be as great in some of your assets because there's more competition for them to look at. And then finally, beyond just the market softening really and the inventory, the other reason why you really need to start is what we said, getting back to what I've heard from my operator partners, is that the new wave of talent has to understand really what that service is, right? On average, residents visit 3 to 9 different communities when they are looking at a home. Even internally, when we look at our survey platform, the staff and the tour consistently have a high benchmark standard that people have to meet. So for example, we need to be able to look at specific parts of that, shop that they're going to get back. For example, timeliness, which we already mentioned too, is one of the subjective data points. 77% of customers say that valuing their time is the most important thing that a company could do. Forrester actually went out there and looked at that. HubSpot said that 68% of people are willing to pay more if they find a location that gives great customer service. So how are you setting yourself apart, from those? And even did you know, conversely of that, if you have a poor shop or a bad customer, it takes almost 12 positive experiences to make up for that one. Zendesk estimates that 80% of customers would rather do business with a competitor after just one poor experience. So you need that mystery shop capability as a place for your teams to practice. I want them to practice on our shoppers as opposed to your actual residents, right, that are coming in. So just a little bit of the reasons there that, again, I think if whether you've paused or you haven't started, now's the time with that market, the inventory, and the overall kind of what a customer expects in today's world, why it's imperative that you have insight into what that process is experiencing.
Boy, that was really insightful and very helpful. And that service element that you were talking about, Jay, really hit home for me because I know there's a lot of times I don't go back to places if I get a bad service. And I think we all have seen, that in our own personal lives and how that relates out to this as well. So that one really stuck home. So one of the poll questions that you guys responded to, you guys actually shared that over 30% in turnover of employees. We're actually hearing on our side from a lot of the customers that we talk to that the average tenure on site right now is 1 to 2 years. So I know you touched on this a little bit, but I do want to dive into that a little bit more. How does that play into the importance of restarting or beginning the mystery shopping?
Yeah. So I would tell you, Amy, I was actually on with a client last week who said, I think it was 60%, but well over 50% of their current employees are less than 2 years old in their company. I mean, it was a major kind of shift overall. And, they said part of that is they don't know what those people don't know, right? If you and I have worked together now for a while, you know where my gaps are, you know where my strengths are. But we also know when there's new team members, that's not always the case. The last I read, 2021 right now is about the most recent hardcore data that we have. But the national turnover rate in 2021 was 47.2%. So it is not hard to think that you theoretically could turn over half of your staff in a year. One of the other ones that I said is on average, companies lose 18%, just year over year. So it's a staggering number. But we also know that, so of those new employees that maybe you don't have the insight, are they following company policies and procedures? Where, again, are there gaps? Where, in those opportunities for success? We also know that highly engaged employees are 87% less likely to leave. I want you to think of that in terms of upskill training.
When you engage back on a shop into upskill training and you show the value of not only did we shop you, but we shopped you to make you better, not to leave you where you were. That's an engaged individual. And those are the type of companies that people say over and over again that they want to continue to work for. And even when we look at that, I think a lot of times we look at what is your culture, in terms of that. So, I liken, we're going to talk here, I know in a minute, I have no doubt, Amy, you're going to bring up our program model and why we think that's super important. And when I think about it, I think, the difference between a program and sometimes targeted shops is targeted is looking specifically at one individual. So what is Amy doing? I specifically want to look at Amy. Where are her gaps? Like, it is a laser focus on one area, as opposed to like when you're looking at a program type, and when we look at that from an employee aspect, we're beginning to tell our employees our company culture is one of, this is the way we do business. This is the way we sell. It's not so much targeted at that one person as to it is an overarching feeling and air that this is how we attack our sales and how we treat our prospects and our potential, future residents, if you will.
Absolutely. And it's easier to make sure that that quality of the service or that engagement is there if you're standing right next to the person, right? And you're coaching them and you're training them. But in our environment where we're disconnected from that experience, that mystery shopping is so important so that you can come in and really get that culture. Is everyone learning, if they're average 10 years, 1 to 2 years, is everyone learning what experience we're trying to do? So that was very insightful and helpful. So thank you. So we've discussed a lot about the benefits and a lot about the value that someone would gain. So let's talk a little bit about the different types of shops that we offer as a whole, and what are the things that someone could participate in?
Yeah, great question. So just if you're looking at my screen right now, there is your list of 12 different shops that Grace Hill can help accommodate for you, right? So the majority of them are recorded or recorded. Some have video. So let's address that first, right? Non-recorded is a great place. If that works in your budget, you're still getting that insight. You're getting a third-party, unbiased opinion in terms of that. And again, really tailored to your company needs with that customization. However, I will tell you, recorded eliminates the he, they, she said type of mentality. And I promise you, if you've been in this industry long enough, you 100% have had that leasing agent who goes, but I swear I didn't say that, or I swear I didn't do that. The ability to have that eliminate some of it, right? And again, it's not meant punitively. I do believe that every leasing agent wants to do a good job. And I believe in their mind, they're like, I gave a great tour. But sometimes we need to be able to show them in order to really kind of move that needle, right? It's that whole trust but verify type of mentality. Obviously, video, we've talked a little bit about that. That does give you some property insight in terms of that as well. But let's talk then about the difference. So phone, right? Or let's start with internet, if you will. Because internet, remember when we went back and we said that one of the most important things that customers want is that you respect their time. So internet says, did they respond in a timely fashion? I will be honest, if I send an email, I expect a response in 2 hours. If I don't get it, I've probably either A, already tried to contact you another way, and that's if I have an existing relationship with you. If I don't, I've probably already moved on to the next person that I think might be able to help me, right? So phone allows you to judge that timeliness. It also lets you look at that lead to tour conversion, right? I know we're really focused on lead to lease conversion, but what's that lead to tour? Do I even get them in the door on the phone to make that connection? It also allows you, again, to identify any kind of technological responses and even the quality of your response, right? When we look at phone, for example, again, timeliness again, I will tell you, I do have sometimes some clients who, just so you know, we typically close a shop if we, after 5 attempts, cannot get anybody on the phone. And sometimes they go, but Jay, I didn't get any insight. I'm like, I think you got valuable insight. If somebody is calling your, asset 5 times and nobody's picking up the phone, that's valuable insight. That could come down really to, do you really have enough employees, to even be able to kind of handle the load and the work of what your staff is having to do. And then finally, when we move to on-site, that's your true experience, right? That's your bread and butter. When we get a tour, we 100% are expecting to close that deal as well. If I've got any asset management firms on here, video on-site is a phenomenal way because, again, it allows you to have a little bit of that boots on the ground. And then finally, two of the things that we really pivoted to during COVID was the virtual, right? And I want you to think of virtual as somebody who is from out of town. I can tell you one of my assets used to be in a downtown setting. People would call all the time saying, I am moving there and I will not be there until the weekend before I have to start my job. So that virtual ability allows them to see. 100% it should be tailored. If you happen to be a student, think about it from a parent. I may be like, I can imagine telling my mom, hey, I love this apartment. My mom would be like, great, I'm on my way to see it, right? Like, this mom's always going to be protective there. So that gives some insight. Or think even more. What if you are one of those places that's not seeing a market softening and you have little availability? You still need to have the ability to show that prospect because you're not always going to be in that situation. And then finally, one of the other ones that we really pivoted to was the self-guided tour. And that is really for your self-sufficient renter, right? The one who's like, or maybe it's your professional who's like, I work every day until 6:30. Your office closes at 6. I don't know when I'm going to get in there. If you've got that, technology to allow for self-guided tours, that opens the door to all of those people. Single-family home operators, if you happen to be on the call today and you're a single-family home, a lot of those run out of a centralized office. And their single-family homes may be really dispersed over an area. So that self-guided tour allows them to get feedback on, is that technology working, but also what was the experience of the person who was walking around and looking maybe, outside of that. Ultimately, Amy, though, those 12 shop types, why it's important is it really allows you to test your policies and procedures, right? And again, I think some of the trends, which we're not even talking about today, but centralized leasing is a huge trend right now in multifamily. I think there's some good and bad that come with that, right? Part of the bad is you have to really be in hone and figure out if it's working. Are people adequately able to answer the phone? Are they able to set you up with a tour? Are they not necessarily just pushing to one asset when you may have 4 or 5 assets operating out of that office? So your ability to test that and hone your procedures as a result of what you're seeing is going to be vital. And then finally, if we have third-party operators on here, third-party management, I would even say, look at that management service agreement, because 100% you've committed to those investors a certain amount of return, whether that's, again, on marketing or whatever it may be. And let's see what those shop types may fit to kind of fit some of those areas and make sure that you're covering those spaces as well. So with that said, Amy, I think also we wanted to launch one more poll. So I'm going to turn it back over to Allie for that.
Thank you, Jay. And what a great audience we've had for participating with us. And thank you, Jay, for sharing all the important reasons that our clients can benefit from mystery shopping. And in our first poll, we heard that most of the audience already does mystery shopping in some way. So now let's share your biggest burden when it comes to mystery shopping. You can select completion time, and again, just answer right on the screen, heavy administration, acting on the results, budgeting, or lack of mystery. And we already had one person in the question section comment about some challenges, so this will be a good one to talk about. The numbers are still moving, so I'm going to give you another second until they slow down. Go ahead and make your final selection. And then we're going to close the poll in 3, 2, 1. And let's see what they said. There you go.
Wow, evenly dispersed again. So we've got 22% on completion time, 18% on the heavy administration, 24% on acting on results, 14 on budgeting, and 20% on the lack of mystery. So that one's kind of an interesting one that we're going to dive into here in just a little bit. So Jay, what I see from that is everyone's budgeted for this. So really there's no one that shouldn't be doing it at this point. Isn't that what that means?
That's how I'm going to take it as well. So we look forward to talking with you after this.
Absolutely. So Jay kind of alluded to this, but we did, if we want to go ahead and close those results on the screen and bring it back to the main screen. So Jay, we did talk about, we offer both programs, and we offer what I'm going to refer to as ad demand, which is, you know, you order them as you need them. So can you maybe talk a little bit about what the benefits are of doing a program and having just that ongoing shopping?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna apologize. I'm lost a little bit of my ability to control the screen at the moment, but yes.
There you go. I think Allison needed to close the. Sorry about that.
No worries. It's all right. It's a learning curve, right? So hopefully at the a la carte screen. Is that where we're at, Amy?
Yeah. Just the difference and the advantages of doing a program versus doing that on demand or just ordering as people need it.
Yeah, and I would say, so again, full transparency, I joined Grace Hill about 4 years ago after being on the property management side. And I will tell you, quick little tangent, part of my question was, I knew who Grace Hill was. I wanted to know where Grace Hill was going. And I think Mystery Shop is a perfect example of where they're going. So I will tell you, this was a little bit of a mind shift for me in how I used to run mystery shops, because mystery shops traditionally in multifamily have been targeted. We've shopped 90 days after hire, or again, we have a performance issue and reactively are trying to look at what's going on. Grace Hill, for example, we still have those targeted a la carte shops, right? We're looking at that definition right here, where I could come in and do that and target it to a specific employee. So don't get me wrong, those things are still very much there. But we do truly believe now in a program model. And that came after we went and took a hard look. Retail has a long history of shops. And we looked specifically at Ralph Lauren, who has a very robust mystery shop. And Ralph Lauren never targets an individual. They look at a store and a location as a whole, because they realize that the customer experience literally is from the moment that they step foot in. And they may have Amy at the register. I may be out there asking if you're finding everything okay. And it could be person back in the dressing room who's, you know, helping you and maybe making an exchange if something isn't exactly what you want. That experience is not linear. It's all over the place. And when we looked at that, we said, you know, the same is true for our on-site teams. That guaranteed you may call in and get Amy, and you ideally want to meet with Amy again, right? But Amy has kids. What if Amy unfortunately had a sick child and had to go pick up a child, right? Or what if you've got fire, flood, and blood happening at the site and you've had to pull Amy off to go do something, right? All of a sudden your assistant manager, your manager, your other leasing staff could be up. It's rarely linear. So we wanted to make sure that we gave you the true experience. Again, I'll be real honest. If I call Amy and I answer the phone and they're like, is Amy Cortez available? And I'm like, no, she's out. How can I help you? Are you looking for a home today? And they're like, oh, I'll call back and talk to Amy. Or if you walk in and Amy's, you know, out walking, getting ready for a move in, and it's taken her a little bit longer because unfortunately your apartment home wasn't ready, and she's got her sparkle bucket out there and she's cleaning away. And I'm like, Amy's out, but I can go ahead and lead you on your tour. I know your time is valuable. And you're like, oh no, I'll come back when Amy's here. I'm going to tell you, red alert, I know you're a shopper, 100%. And when Amy comes back, I'm going to be like, Amy, be on your A game, because you're getting shopped, right? And while that's great that Amy is now front of mind, the fact of the matter is, I want to know what Amy is experiencing again when that unit wasn't ready and she's having to work overtime for that, but got the call that somebody's waiting for her, right? So 100%, we want to know what that true experience is. And So that program helps to put that mystery back in, and it does allow you to see what the true resident experience is. I also am kind of looking at the poll results, completion time. We hear this a lot, right? 100%. And I will say when it's a targeted approach, it typically does get a little bit more challenging with completion times. Because again, I've got to work around Amy's schedule. Maybe I call and Amy is off for the next 2 days. So now I've got to pivot until next week, right? Or again, imagine if I'm a third party, I'm an independent contractor, I've already got shops lined up, and now I pick up Amy's that also needs to be specifically targeted for her. I got to work that into my schedule, right? So targeted does tend to be a little bit more completion time. The great thing with program shops, if I'm an independent contractor, I get to pick up these shops. I know when my shop deadline is, whether it's the quarter, the month, or whatever. I now can proactively plan my time to make sure that I'm hitting that guaranteed time for you, the month or the quarter. So it really, these program aspects has really allowed us to kind of really increase our completion time. Our program people are seeing completion times of 99% on-time completion because of just those things that we talked about. And we're not talking about just a handful of completions. Grace Hill as a whole completed almost 71,000 mystery shops last year alone. So ton of those things in there as well. When we also talk about, in general, Amy, what the benefit is, baseline of results, right? Another thing that we said, I already talked about how if you were being targeted, you'd know, I got to be on my A game. We traditionally, with a targeted shop, see a 5% increase in overall shop results. Again, you might think that's great. As a former educator, I go, nope. I want Amy to be able to act that way at a moment's notice, not just when she knows that she's on camera type of deal. We actually did an internal study here for those that target shops, more so over a program, they kind of saw a roller coaster in their results. And that's, again, because sometimes it was, your staff got keyed off, so they really hit it out of the park. Sometimes they didn't. For those that are on more of a program model, we're legitimately seeing quarter over quarter consistent gains because we go back to that initial discussion we had. It's now become part of the overriding company culture that this is the expectation of what happens, right? And then again, when I look at things from the poll, like heavy administration, this dashboard right here, these ordered shops, those automatically were ordered because it's part of a program. So you didn't have to go in and do this, or fill out something. You just know those are going to be. Those acting on the results that we've seen, which I saw that was one of them. Again, don't forget, that's that upskill training that you can come in here and assign out with a due date, right? Budgeting, let's talk about that because I will tell you, that was one of my biggest ones. I'd go through a budget and I'm like, all right, we'll definitely budget for shops in the summer because that's a heavy or really busy time for us. But always after, kind of that, we'd always maybe lose an employee. So I think I'll budget for somebody in Q3 to get shop because I might have a new hire. On a program model, we give you a line item budget. Every month is the same amount, and you're getting shops consistently throughout the year. I will just tell you, as somebody who hated writing variance reports and having to explain my variances, that was music to my ear because that's one less variance that I had to go write as a result of that. And then finally I saw somebody said lack of mystery, and I hope we really touched on that again when we talked about how we pivoted to kind of a program versus a targeted as well. So, and I know that Amy's going to offer for us to talk offline to any of you all that may be here. We would love to dive more into this. I know this is a little different webinar than maybe what we've done in the past, Amy. We've thrown a lot of stats at you, but I really want you to be armed with, if you need to go back and make a case to your C-suite level about why you want to restart, I want you to be able to say, look, I've heard stats on what's happening with the market and the inventory, and I also think we have to restart at a program, and here's why. So we look forward to maybe continuing this conversation as well.
Thanks, Jay. That was very helpful. And my last question for you was going to be about budget, but I think we saw that budget wasn't an issue, so maybe we can skip this question. But no, really, ROI. We're running, we got 10 minutes here left, so we'll just briefly touch on this one. But is there any quick ROI that you can throw at the group to let them know with the implementation of a mystery shopping program, what they would get in return?
Yeah, so I really think the ROI, I'm just going to touch on three really quickly, is number one, that stat that I talked about last time where we saw in a program model that quarter over quarter gain, right? That was a consistent gain. That right there to me is a strong ROI because that means we're addressing those gaps and we're making your leasing professionals just that much stronger every quarter. So there's your ROI for the program. However, let's be very honest. If you just get one more lease, just one more, which I think you're going to get more than one more with that increase in leasing velocity. But if you get one more, I actually went and plugged this into our ROI calculator based on kind of our average package, right? So one of our average, kind of what we typically see people is they do an internet, a phone, and an on-site. If you were to just do that and just get one additional lease during the quarter, it's a 544% gain on your ROI based on what we're looking at net, what you paid versus what the income and the result was. So literally just one lease is a 500% increase in the overall ROI. And then finally, I think, again, which we've already kind of touched on it, that ROI is really buttoning up your policies and procedures to make sure there are things like, are you sufficiently staffed? I was talking with one client that the person called 4 times during the weekend to try to come in and see it. They never got through. And what the client gained was, I think we're going to have 3 people on site during the weekends, not just 2, right? Because that's missed revenue right there. So we can talk about the ROI, but also can we mitigate the missed revenue to ensure that you're capturing every dollar out there?
Awesome. 544% ROI. I think I'm sold. Can I sign up?
100%.
We are going to introduce 2 promotions for this webinar. So just for attending today or registering for today, I think you've got the wrong screen up there, Jay. I need the slide if you could. We've got the Google Doc up. So for attending today, you've got a free video shot with a new contract. So that is our first promotion that you can take part of. And the second promotion is an additional 5% off if you sign up by the end of the month. So Jay's now sharing the free shop. And if you want to go to the 5% off when you sign up for the end of month. So if you're on the fence, and you're not sure, this is a great time for you to sign up for those 2 promos. So Allison, I've been watching the questions. I know we've got a few coming in, so I want to make sure we've got time for those. So if you can maybe throw some at Jay and I, and then we'll wrap up the webinar.
Absolutely. And I want to say thank you to the audience. This has been a great audience, and I've enjoyed chatting with some people during the event. This is the part you've been waiting for with the Q&A. But before we get to it, I'm going to throw in a quick plug because we've got an awesome webinar coming up this month in recognition of fair housing, and we would love to invite you all to join us. It's on April 25th. It's featuring Wesley Aylshire. He's owner of Aylshire Consulting, and he's also Vice President of Learning and Development at South Oxford Management. It's a free webinar, and you really won't want to miss his top 7 tips to reduce your fair housing liability. So if that's something that's important to you, which I believe it's important to everybody, then go ahead to gracehill.com. You can register. Again, it's free, and we're glad to provide that to you this month. So without further ado, the questions that I've been saving in here for you and chatting with people. The first one is from Ruben A. And we touched on this a little bit, Jay, but he's concerned about the quality of the mystery shopper and how they perform their shop. If there's more context to that, Ruben, we can unmute you, but that was his question.
Yeah, I think we've heard that before, Ruben, so I appreciate that. What I would tell you is, our mystery shoppers, we partner with a third-party agency called the Shadow Agency. It's literally what they do. In addition to that, so they have training. We also do give feedback. So if for some reason a shopper is not performing, they are taken out of the shopping mix. In addition to that, every one of the shops goes through a quality assurance measure as well. And what I love about that is, if the person says, Amy didn't introduce herself, but later on in the narrative, they go, I entered the building and Amy came up and introduced herself. Our quality assurance takes that back to the shopper and says, we have a discrepancy here, right? In addition to that, I will say things like video and recorded mitigates a lot of that. That also helps with the QA process, if you will. And then finally, one of the things I'm most proud of is, for example, if we shop a location, our shoppers will not reshop you for 18 months. And that ensures, again, that we kind of, don't skew any of the overall results because somebody is used to seeing Amy as a frequent flyer shopper in that regard. So hopefully that helps. Ruben, if not, let's definitely take down Amy and I's information. Let's connect offline as well, and we can address some of those overall ones as well.
Thank you, Jay. We had a couple more come in and you still have time. So go ahead and type your questions in the chat box if you have questions, or raise your hand and we can unmute you. The second question comes from Jennifer H. And I think what she's saying here is how long would it take to get started? I guess if they did go forward, how long till the shops would start? If that's not the question, then let me know.
Awesome. So yeah, implementation for us is fairly quick. In a lot of ways, we can get you up and running. I would say to really be on the safe side, the 15th or about the middle of the month is really kind of the sweet spot to ensure that we can get you up and running for the next, whether that's a la carte or targeted. So that means when we hang up here, if you're interested, let's connect, do a hand raise so we can get it. I do want to bet Amy can pull a little strings if it's Monday or Tuesday of next week to ensure that we can get you up and running. And plus you get to take, advantage of that 5% offer that Amy graciously offered.
Thank you, Jennifer H. Thank you, Jay, for that information. And if that wasn't the question, then again, reach out to us. We have another question here. This is from Angela B. And she's asking about if the programs are only applicable for conventional multifamily market. I assume she means versus like affordable or student, things like that. Angela.
100%, absolutely not. We can do it all. So give us a call. I will tell you, we have military partners now. What we do is we just make sure that we hard code and relate to our shoppers appropriate things, right? Affordable, we want to make sure that we give them the threshold of the income. For military, for example, we're going to make sure that if they're visiting a naval community, that they're not asking questions surrounding, the Army or something like that. Senior housing, for me, if I was, it'd be something like, I'm looking for an apartment home for my mom, who is in her 70s or whatever it may be. So we can definitely make sure that we hard code those things in to make sure that, when our shopper goes, that it's applicable. And again, we are not teeing off or kind of giving away the mystery, if you will.
Thank you, Jay, and thank you, Angela, for that question. There's still time if you want to add another question to the chat box. The last one that I have here is from Ryan I, and he's asking, I guess, what we learned from COVID about mystery shops. I'm not sure what he means there, but maybe Jay, can you talk about COVID and mystery shopping? And Ryan, feel free to raise your hand if you want to go vocal.
Yeah, I think what we learned the most there, Ryan, number one, the virtual and the self-guide really arose from that, right? And there are shop types that we're not seeing to go anywhere. The other thing that we probably saw as well is it used to be if Amy would have showed up and said, do you have an apartment to show me? And you said no, because maybe you didn't have a model anymore because you were 100% occupied. That usually was a failed shop. We now have built those things in where if you say no, we want to make sure that your teams can pivot and say, but do you have a moment? Let's do a virtual shop right now, or what other options. So we wanted to make sure that we kind of have those branching options so that those things are there. We want to make sure that, again, we're ensuring that your pipeline of prospects continues to build, even if maybe you didn't. So those are just a couple of the quick examples. But again, I would love, you can tell I love to talk. I'd love the opportunity to get on a phone call with you and really deep dive some of those, concerns or maybe some specific ROIs for your company.
Thank you,
Awesome.
Jay. I think that's everything we have in the question box, so I'll pass it back to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I know that we are in the final minute here. So first of all, I'll say if anyone wants immediate follow-up, if you can chat Born to Shop in the chat box or in the question box, we will make sure that someone follows up with you immediately. But we are so grateful that we had such a big turnout and that you all showed up. We apologize for the little blips that we had. We are introducing a brand new platform to our webinars, and I think we're still working out a few of the bugs. So, I saw a lot of the questions of, would you get this information afterwards? We absolutely will figure out a way to get you all of the great stats and the information that Jay shared with you, and we'll make sure that we get that out to you in some format. But we hope you've learned a lot about the value and the need for mystery shopping. We offered several promotions, so if you're on the fence, now is a great time for you to jump on board and take advantage of those. As I said, if you want someone to follow up, put Born to Chat in there, or you can email me directly. My email is acortez@gracehill.com. But Jay, thank you so much for your insight today and all the knowledge that you have shared with us. It was very insightful. So we'll go ahead and conclude this webinar, and thank you guys so much for your attendance.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.